public transfers to the elderly in Brazil that then lies behind the great generosity of private transfers from the elderly to younger family members. Okay, so here are, for some reason Uruguay is left off of this chart, I don't know why, but there is Brazil, there is Mexico also making strong downward transfers, even though it has a weak public pension system, and Costa Rica and Chile. Okay, now the suggestion is that when there's very strong reliance on public sector transfers or family transfers, and workers expect to be supported in this way, when they become old, they will have less motivation to save, and savings may be lower. In some countries, there is fairly strong reliance on asset income in old age. So it's particularly so in India, Philippines, Thailand, but it's also particularly true in Mexico, where there's close to 100% of reliance on asset income. And the US also is very high. So in these countries, one might expect that as population ages, there will be some natural force tending to raise assets per person in the population, per worker, and if those assets are invested domestically, that may raise labor income, it may raise the productivity of labor, and it may be somewhat of an engine driving per capita income growth and productivity. Okay, so in this case, it will be the case, there will be less need for public taxes and for private transfers to fund the consumption of the elderly as populations age. So for this reason, also in the United States, I think population aging will be less of a problem than it will be in many of the European countries or in a country like Japan, where there's less reliance on asset accumulation to support consumption. Okay, so now I'm going to conclude. Population aging is coming, it is inevitable, it is just a natural consequence of low fertility and low mortality. We wouldn't want to, I think, change either the low mortality or, say, at least replacement level fertility. Some countries are not happy with fertility below replacement level, that's another. In rich countries, if we go back to early in my talk, you may recall that in rich countries, consumption in old age has gone up relative to consumption at younger ages. And labor income in old age has gone down relative to in poorer countries. And so the economic life cycle has changed in a way that makes older people more expensive for society at the same time that the proportion of older people is rising. The changes in the economic life cycle amplified the problem of population aging. Population aging is certainly going to cause a number of economic problems or raise economic challenges. One of these I haven't talked about is the fiscal sustainability of public programs. That should be a concern here in Brazil with its very generous pension programs, which has a positive side, but it's also going to be extremely difficult to sustain as the population ages, and it's going to age rapidly. You now have fertility well below replacement level, and it probably will continue down, I would guess, so it's something to worry about. If old age is funded, at least in part, by assets, then as I was saying a moment ago, the population aging itself may lead to asset accumulation. If those assets are invested in domestic capital markets, that may boost productivity domestically, but in any case, it will raise income, even if invested abroad. I'm not one to say that pensions should be privatized, but I think there's a question of finding the right balance between unfunded public pensions and public or private asset-based pensions. I think both have advantages, and the ideal program will be some combination of the two. And then, as I said when I was talking about human capital, the very low fertility that leads to population aging also leads to increased investment in human capital. Now, in rich low fertility countries, or poor low fertility countries, the growth rate of the labor force in numbers is going to be slower as fertility falls. But at the same time, the growth rate of the labor force in numbers may be smaller. The growth rate in terms of quality and productivity may be more rapid for a reason that is systematically related to the slow growth in numbers, namely, more will have been invested in education and health of the labor force as children. And that may offset, to some degree, the difficulties of supporting an aging population. Okay, and I think that brings us to the end. I think we need to think about population aging and worry about it, but I don't see population aging as a overwhelming problem or something that we can't address through appropriate policies and adjustments. Thank you very much.